Okay. So, full house. That's great to see. Hi, everyone. My name's Ebru Ilhan. I'll be moderating this session from Generation X to Generation There. We have an amazing lineup. And we're missing one speaker, but I'm told she's on her way. So we're just going to do it a little bit unconventionally in the spirit of Generation There. So I have with me to my far left, Jude Kelly, Artistic Director of the South Bank Center. Right next to Jude, I have Lauren Bone. She's editor-at-large and Middle East correspondent at the Ground Truth Project, and she's also the co-founder of Foreign Policy Interrupted and School Cycle. And just next to me, I have Christina Barudi, who's 16 years old, and she's got many accolades, among which are being an athlete, and she's going to talk to us about her agenda on the future of well-being. The last speaker I have is Kumba Gawlo-Seck. She's Senegalese singer, songwriter, and composer, and she'll be seated right next to Jude when she arrives. So, let's get started. I'd like to first turn to Lauren and then to the other two speakers to help us sort of set the stage by a few questions about millennials, the millennial generation. So, Lauren, how would you characterize millennials? Are particularly those that you work with in Middle East and North Africa? Are there any shared experiences that set this generation apart?
Millennials are awful. No, I'm kidding. I've always been so confused by the bad rep that millennials get that we're... Oh, can you hear me now? Oh, I think it's on.
I think so, too.
Can you hear me now? Really close to my mouth like this?
Yeah, exactly.
This is awkward. I've always been confused by the bad rep that millennials get, that we're selfish, that we're entitled, that we're lazy. Because in my journalism, in my reporting around the world, specifically the Middle East, I just haven't come across that. So I moved to Egypt shortly after university to report and to start a global affairs journal out of the American University in Cairo. And about 5 months after I moved there, the Egyptian uprising happened, which was it was an amazing moment in history to see so many people, specifically youth, rise up. And so many millennials that I interviewed felt as though for so long they were not empowered, that they didn't have any rights, that they didn't have any space to dissent or to explore or to make something of themselves. So the Arab Spring was a really incredible moment across the region where you saw a whole range of people, but specifically millennials, rise up and really claim their space in society. We're seeing now, though, across the region sort of a return to the old regimes, and we're seeing, again, restrictive spaces. And so many young people that I talk to, so many millennials say that they really are struggling to find their own voice in society, that they're really struggling to achieve their dreams. I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I think one of the challenges that millennials have as a group that are predominantly digital natives who have grown up with the internet, we have so much access to information at our fingertips at all hours of the day and so many issues that we're all interested. A lot of millennials that I talk to say they're overwhelmed. They don't know where to go about affecting change. They don't know how to go about affecting change. Is a tweet enough? I don't know, is, scrolling through your Instagram feed, your Twitter feed, your Facebook feed, and liking something or joining a virtual campaign enough? They don't know. And I think there's an element of overwhelm that a lot of millennials and Generation Z, which I think you're technically a part of, are dealing with right now. So it's not so much apathy or entitlement or laziness. I see there being just a great amount of overwhelm among the generation.
So, what about the platforms themselves? I mean, how do you see opportunities opening up, or what are the shortcomings of social media and digital platforms as far as this generation is concerned?
Yeah, I always kind of cringe when I see the uprisings in the Middle East labeled, the Facebook revolution or the Twitter revolution. These were great tools that really helped galvanize and get people onto the streets and organize. But I don't think they're enough. And I think they need to be paired with on the ground, in real life action, which I think is the challenge, because nowadays it's easy to be sort of an armchair activist, or someone who shares a post on, even in America, on gun policy, and okay, that's enough. But is it? I don't think so. And I think the struggle is finding what organizations on the ground are already doing the necessary and good work, and pairing with them and making sure millennials and everyone are cognizant that these organizations exist, that there are ties and bonds that can be made. But it's overwhelming, I think, again, for a lot of these youth.
Interesting. So, Jude, what are your views on the mainstream portrayals of millennials? And do you think that this is the first generation that will be defined not primarily by its desires, but rather its willingness to dare and impact change?
Well, okay, so I looked at the title and then the copy for this session. And I think banding people up together and giving them a kind of title is always the start of something quite dangerous. I mean, I'll just say this, that when people talked about the swinging 60s, most people were not swinging in the 60s. They were actually living in quite a dull society. They didn't have much money. They were trying to make their way as usual. Some people were swinging, and they were attracting all the headlines, of course. But I think it's very dangerous to sort of think that there is a kind of millennium generation who all are having the same life experiences. Because that's a branding term to do with, pushing forward. I think a lot to do with, what they will buy, what they will sell, etc. Of a group of, fairly solvent and active and mobile young people. So I think that an intelligent conversation at any women's forum needs to revisit the idea that we are talking about acknowledging many, many different life experiences of girls and women, and of course boys and men, and they don't clump together neatly under a Generation X or Generation anything. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. And the second is that I think that what we definitely are experiencing across the world is, something like the fourth industrial revolution, the fourth revolution, because of the speed of particular kinds of technology. I mean, there's always been technology, but the speed of technology that's giving people, not all yet, but many, many people, access to cross-cultural conversations, cross-generational conversations, all the things that you've just referred to. That is a revolution of communication. And I think that does give everybody, but particularly the young, the potential for a voice. And I think that is always a very exciting thing, but it can also be a very malign thing, depending on who's leading the voices. I think young people still need, and we all need, intergenerational conversations. I think the idea that, because older people can back away from young people and kind of go, well, they know what they're doing, I'm not really part of it, over to you. And speaking as a parent of two millenniums, then actually that's just not the case. I think that young people can be quite lonely and feel that they are semi-abandoned by older people who aren't listening enough and are kind of assuming that that young people are just sufficiently excited to themselves. I don't believe that's true. what I do think, though, is that young people, and I want to differentiate between boys and girls in a minute, but I think young people are older quicker. I mean, they have got information by the time they're 8 because of social media that give them sort of responsibilities, because once you know things, you can't unknow them. And so I think that they are much more articulate, many of them are, much more connected, much more knowledgeable, and some of them are able to put that to extremely good purpose. And some of them, as you say, are finding it bewildering. So I don't think there's a sort of package that we can talk about quite yet. But I want to talk about this idea of millennials and social action, and are they more daring? I think, yes, we are constantly saying we want to hear from young people, and now they have the mechanisms to be heard, so they're using it. And I think that's producing some fantastic examples of social mobilization. But because we are at a women's economic conference, I want to talk about some of the things that are worrying about this. Unless girls and women are prepared to acknowledge that the world is still not one of equity, it is not gender equity that we have by any means in any part of the world. Not even the Scandinavian countries have actual gender equity. And I noticed that because people band the generations together as if boys and girls are sort of somehow equal and that gender fluidity is like achieved, if we're not careful, girls and women will downplay some of the very, very big social causes which still need fighting for. And I'll give you an example. Boys and girls together, men and women together, will speak very strongly about issues to do with the environment. But name me a real social movement of gender activism on all sides that's dealing with violence against women. It doesn't really exist, not fully. Childcare, that is not a social movement that is existing about change. Domestic equity, that is not a social movement that's existing. So I just want to warn us against thinking that the idea of daring to put your name in front of causes has achieved gender equity, because I don't believe it has. So I want us to sort of make sure that we don't end up feeling as if we've achieved something through young people that makes young women and girls feel that they can't still fight for something which isn't there yet. So those are the things I wanted to say. Thanks.
Would you like to come on? Thank you. Sorry, just managing transition. So Kumba Gaulusek is able to join us. Please. Thank you. So I'm just going to turn now to Christina for your contribution. And perhaps it's a good place to start. You are the next generation on this panel. And I'd like to hear from you what your views are about your generation, what excites you about them, what makes you feel optimistic, and what are some aspects that concern you?
Okay, so my generation are very brilliant, very smart. They're very hardworking, and they're aware of the strong competition that there is between us. They're much more exposed to media, to information, and thus much more informed. My parents' generation, they used to go to the public library to inform themselves and used to take maybe hours and days to search for an issue. We have the information on the top of our fingers. Speed of communication, email, internet, makes it a lot easier for us to do research on medicine, on robotics, etc. And moving 30 years ago, they used to wash clothes by hand. Today, they start to deliver purchases by drone. So in many ways, I am very optimistic of my generation. However, my concern today is that in the same time, the new lifestyles are making people less move and more influence into bad substances such as drugs, smoking, etc., and not enough sport. So I wish to give you some indicative numbers just for me to illustrate the magnitude of the problem. In fact, the National Institute on Drug Abuse And the Center for Disease Control reported that it costs to the US $700 billion annually because of abuse of tobacco, alcohol, and illicit drug, and $117 billion annually also because of poor physical activity. This sums up to a staggering $857 billion per year. If you do the math, this costs about $2,400 per person per year. If you multiply by the world population, this is equal to a caricatural number of $16,000 trillion per year. This exact ratio may not be exactly the same for each country, but it gives you a proportion and an idea of the magnitude of the problem.
Worrying numbers indeed. So, what's the solution? I mean, what opportunities do you see? And I know that you're driving your own action agenda. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. Okay. So, I will talk about how to get into well-being. Indeed, well-being is so important that in 2009, President Sarkozy, to the Commission of Stiglitz, proposed that well-being should be reflected into statistical account when measuring the GDP. And in my opinion, this is right, because if you feel better, if you're healthier, you're much more productive, and you work more, so you're much more productive. My proposal for well-being is very clear. Sports it is. In fact, sports help in weight control. It helps also young students obtain assets, which increase their defensive mechanism against substance abuse. In fact, it increases confidence, self-esteem, self-relief, teach how to commit, and code of conduct. And especially when you do some competitive sports, you're much more engaged, and you're usually not at all influenced into bad substances. So I will give you some few things that needs to happen to push people to move to sports. In fact, schools can help with such a program. When teachers are well trained, they can target the students that are potentially using bad substances. They can help those students by communicating with them, by giving them extracurriculum grades when they are practicing extracurriculum activities. Parents, and especially mothers, thanks to their closeness with their kids, can from their early stages teach their kids to refuse drugs when offered and encourage them to turn into sports. Mothers are the biggest influence in a kid's in a child's life. They should support their children, encourage them to exercise. So my opinion is a new sports initiative plan that should financially reward those mothers who, in addition of their multitasking activities, encourage their kids to sport. Media and NGOs can also do so much. In fact, they can help explain the bad consequences of bad substances, and they can help by not gratifying the consumption of such substances. Governments can encourage also citizens to choose a healthier lifestyle by providing financial aid to build some sports centers, facilitating access to sport regardless of social classes, as in it shouldn't matter if a citizen is poor or rich. Everyone should be able to access and allowed to exercise. They have to raise health awareness campaigns also. In order to fund those budgets, they have to raise taxes on unhealthy food and fundraising events.
Thank you. So less coffee, more gym for everyone. Now I'm going to move to Kumba. Kumba, la première question. Oui. So you started singing professionally at the age of 7. That's really young. what was this journey like for you?
Ok, merci. Bonjour. Alors, moi, j'ai commencé à... Je suis donc Kumba Gawlo. Mon nom est Kumba Gawlo. Je viens du Sénégal, donc de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Je suis issue d'une famille de Gawlo et de griots. Donc, les griots et les Gawlo sont les personnes qui siégeaient dans la cour du roi pour raconter l'histoire. Et ce sont eux qui chantaient les éloges des guerriers quand ils étaient dans les champs de bataille, une manière de les encourager, de leur donner de l'énergie, voilà, de les aider à aller de l'avant. Et à la fin des combats, ce sont eux qui revenaient à la maison pour raconter, écrire l'histoire, raconter ce qui se passait dans les champs de bataille. Et donc, je suis issue de cette famille-là, d'une mère de chanteuse et d'un père auteur-compositeur qui m'a initiée au métier de chanteuse. Et j'ai commencé à l'âge de 7 ans parce que quand maman chantait, c'est moi qui l'accompagnais. Et je tapais la percussion. C'est moi qui étais aussi un peu la percussionniste parce que j'avais une calebasse que je mettais par terre et je tapais dessus pour donner le rythme à ma mère. Voilà, dès l'âge de 7 ans. Donc, j'ai commencé à... Et mon père m'encadrait, écrivait des chansons pour moi. À l'âge de 14 ans, il m'a inscrit à un télécrochet, donc un concours de chant, dans le cadre de la lutte contre l'apartheid pour soutenir Nelson Mandela et lutter contre l'apartheid. Et c'est à cette époque-là, donc j'ai eu à remporter le prix du concours de chant, d'où mon sobriquet, la voix d'or, parce que le concours, c'était de chercher la voix d'or. C'était un peu comme ce qui se passe en France en ce moment, The Voice. Voilà. Et donc, voilà. Et donc, et de là est parti mon surnom, la diva à la voix d'or. Voilà. Et donc, à 14 ans. Et j'ai commencé à continuer à travailler à 14 ans, puisque étant issue d'une famille modeste, mon père est policier, donc il ne gagnait pas beaucoup d'argent à l'époque. Ma mère, n'ayant pas fait l'école, ne travaillait pas non plus. Donc la chanson ou les baptêmes ou les cérémonies familiales qu'elle animait, c'est ce qui permettait de survivre à la maison, en fait de subvenir aux besoins. Et du coup, quand j'ai commencé à travailler, j'ai commencé à gagner de l'argent. Et c'est avec cet argent-là qu'on payait le loyer à la maison, l'électricité, que je faisais aussi... que je nourrissais mes frères et sœurs puisque je suis l'aînée de la famille. Voilà, et c'est parti comme ça. Donc, j'ai commencé à cet âge-là et puis voilà. Et je n'ai pas arrêté.
That's an amazing story. And I hope we can hear the golden voice a bit on this session. But I want to ask, how can music be a force for inspiration and action?
Comment la musique a-t-elle pu être une force d'inspiration et d'action?
La musique a toujours été pour moi une force d'inspiration et d'action pour plusieurs raisons. D'abord parce que je suis née pour chanter, je pense. Parce que mon père, quand j'avais déjà 14 ans, étant déjà militaire, m'a élevée avec, comment dirais-je, vraiment dans une ambiance militaire. Tout devait être fait, mais bien fait. Et comme il voyait en moi un peu son espoir, c'est ce qu'il disait, tu es mon espoir, c'est à toi d'aider la famille à s'en sortir, tu dois chanter. D'autant plus que tes arrière-grands-parents tous chantaient, tu es né pour chanter, c'est à toi de mettre en avant la lumière Gawlo, de faire de sorte à ce que l'ethnie à laquelle nous appartenons soit connue à travers le monde. Et puis moi, j'avais 14 ans, j'avais envie de m'amuser parfois. Mais pour lui, il ne fallait pas s'amuser, c'était chanter et aller à l'école parce que c'était aussi la condition. Travailler bien à l'école pour avoir de bonnes notes parce qu'il dit qu'une fille doit être instruite et connaître ses droits, savoir lire. Il ne faut pas être comme ta mère, elle ne sait pas lire, écrire. Ce qui fait que quand je lui apprends, c'est difficile. Toi, je veux que tu saches lire, écrire et que tu sois une grande chanteuse, ma fille. Voilà. Ce qui fait que ce n'était pas toujours très facile. Et parfois, je me rappelle, mon père n'hésitait pas à me donner une gifle parce que pour lui, il fallait que je chante. Voilà. Et je me rappelle quand des fois j'étais sur scène Après le concours, une fois que je l'ai remporté, c'était très difficile aussi parfois parce que quand je chantais un peu plus bas, ils trouvaient que ce n'était pas assez haut les notes et qu'il fallait que je chante plus haut. Et là, ils me donnaient une gifle. Et quand je me mettais à pleurer, je me rappelle, le professeur de piano qui était là disait « Ah, tonton, il ne faut pas la taper, laisse-la chanter. je vais m'arranger avec elle, je sais comment l'apprendre, ça va venir. » Et mon père dit « Non, c'est ma fille, je veux qu'elle soit une grande chanteuse. C'est dur pour elle aujourd'hui, mais un jour, elle me remerciera. » Et puis là, il me disait « Je vais aller au fond de la salle. La salle, c'est un peu comme l'opéra ici à Paris. C'est une salle de 1500 places. Et puis, vous imaginez la distance entre la dernière chaise et la scène. C'est assez long quand même. » Et mon père se mettait là-bas et disait « Tu vois, je vais aller au fond là-bas. Si je vais au fond et que de là-bas, je n'entends pas ta voix, quand je vais revenir, tu vas recevoir une gifle encore plus dure parce que tu es une gaoulo. » Parce que tu es une gaoulo et une gaoulo doit chanter haut et fort. On doit t'entendre. Je veux entendre ta voix d'or. Tu n'es pas pour rien la voix d'or. Et c'est comme ça que j'ai appris à chanter assez haut, sans le micro. Voilà, et aller très très haut dans les octaves, jusqu'à 5-6 octaves. Je pense que ça m'est venu de là. Voilà, et du coup, donc c'était un peu ça pour moi, voilà mon cursus, mon carrière dans ce métier. Ce que j'ai appris, parfois c'était difficile, mais je pense qu'avec avec l'âge, avec l'expérience, j'ai compris maintenant ce que voulait mon père pour moi et ce qu'il a fait pour moi. Je pense que j'ai répondu à la question, hein, c'est ça? OK.
You most definitely did. Thank you. And it's really touching that when we talk about generations, we also turn to our own experiences with across generations, both with members of our own and also with our parents and grandparents. So I just want to use for each speaker to use the next minute to talk about the way forward in the spirit of daring to lead in a disrupted world. And then I'm going to take a few questions from the audience. So Lauren, maybe I can start with you. How do you think that what opportunity do we have to move away from armchair activism, and what are you doing to facilitate that?
In whatever country I'm in reporting, I always try to link younger people, part of the millennial generation or younger, to experienced people in the field. I think this goes to your point. We need to facilitate more connections. We need to make sure that younger people have access to people, experienced people on the ground. I think mentorship is huge. A lot of people, especially young women, come to me asking, how do I find a mentor? How do I find somebody that can really help bring me to the next level? I think to get over this feeling of millennials feeling bewildered or overwhelmed, we really need to be facilitating connections, and we need to make sure that other generations, people from other walks of life, are connected to get at similar goals.
And Christina, how about you? How will you take action to improve the well-being of young adults?
So I wish to suggest a tighter cooperation between the concerned ministries of health, interior, sport and tourism, and food to launch or enhance, if it already exists, the roadmap for a national sport program to push people to sport and reduce the burden cost to the public sector due to sedentary life and substance use. So the savings will permit to fund some good, some causes, some more fruitful causes. One great cause that comes into my mind as I am involved in few of such projects is a cause to educate and feed children of refugees and invest to reduce the number of those refugees. The HCR estimate that there is approximately 60 million people displaced worldwide, with 42,500 newly displaced every day. Imagine the size of the suffering. Such investment would first and mostly diminish the humanitarian suffering of the refugees, but also it has a measurable benefit. In fact, it should, on the other hand, lessen the adverse bad impact on the economy, cultural, social infrastructure, and political tension of the host countries. So today, within the session topic, I wish to dare to say that using sports, we can save money by diminishing the economic burden from some bad substance and obesity, and use it to help refugees and other disadvantaged children in order to have healthier, wealthier, and more peaceful cities.
Thank you for that. And Jude, I put the same question to you, but specifically, of course, in the space of the arts. In what concrete ways are the arts enabling and amplifying the ability to come together around a generation dare?
Well, I think that we're aware that some huge social movements have been able to be articulated through the arts. So, for example, if you look at some of the terrible community deficits in America, for the last 60 years, and it is 60 years, hip-hop culture has been able to articulate the dreams, the aspirations, and the anger of many of those communities. And that has spread right across the African diaspora. In fact, it's, on the one hand, it's a global phenomena of the kind of music industry, but on another hand, it still represents that idea of being able to use art as a social platform for trying to call for change. I think it was very obvious in Tahrir Square that actually the filmmakers, the banner makers, the visual artists, I mean, they were the ones that were able to capture the story. And it's true, of course, in South Africa during the apartheid regime, the arts always comes to the front when people need to talk about the need for something different. Because in the end, you're talking about storytelling. And storytelling is what the arts do. So that is why I feel very, very strongly that we have to give children in education the right to art, the right to make art, not just to appreciate art. Not all school systems do that. And I think it's fair to say that many governments are very frightened of art and artists. It's often in despotic regimes, it'll be the first thing to get clamped down on. So I would say that the young generation feel much more at home because of social media, actually, with photographic collage, with making music, with making films, and that is the way their voice will get heard. They need more of those skills.
Thank you. And Kumba, again, in 1 minute, could you tell us how you will use your voice to empower youth in Senegal and beyond?
Vous savez, chaque pays a son histoire, sa culture, sa tradition, sa manière de voir les choses. Et chez moi, en Afrique, particulièrement dans mon pays, j'ai été, comment dirais-je, élevée dans une tradition, avec une tradition. Quand je faisais des erreurs, enfant, au lieu de me réprimander, je me rappelle que mes parents me disaient mes origines. Qui j'étais, d'où je venais, à quelle famille j'appartenais et la beauté de la famille à laquelle j'appartiens. C'était pour mon père, d'après lui, une manière de me donner de la fierté, de m'aider à me relever et à garder la tête haute au lieu de baisser le regard. Et je pense qu'aujourd'hui, il est important, et cela m'a beaucoup aidé dans ma vie, cela m'a renforcé. Cela m'a permis aussi de me dire toujours que je fais partie d'une belle famille, que je fais partie des meilleurs et que je peux faire partie des meilleurs et jamais me rétrograder. Et prenant exemple alors sur ce cursus et ce que j'ai vécu, qui a fait de moi la jeune femme que je suis, avec tellement de fierté et pas d'orgueil, pas de vanité non plus. parce qu'il faut savoir faire la part des choses. Je pense qu'il est important aujourd'hui, surtout avec tout ce qui se passe dans le monde, les conflits, les incompréhensions entre l'ancienne génération et la nouvelle génération. Je pense qu'il est important que les jeunes connaissent leur histoire, qu'ils aient une identité, qu'ils sachent qui ils sont, d'où ils viennent et qu'ils comprennent l'importance de porter le drapeau d'un pays, quel que soit le pays auquel on appartient. Ce pays quand même est important et cela a un drapeau. Le fait de porter le drapeau d'un pays doit être une fierté et se dire je dois me battre pour faire partie des meilleurs. Et faire partie des meilleurs, c'est bien étudier à l'école, c'est tout faire pour avoir le bon job, c'est rester sur la bonne voie pour pouvoir impulser d'autres personnes. Et je pense que c'est aussi à cela que sert la musique et c'est à travers cette musique que je pourrais, moi, raconter des histoires, parler aux jeunes de leur devenir, de leur avenir, les impulser à servir de modèle aux autres générations, mais surtout de bons modèles.
Thank you. So we have about 4 minutes, so I'm going to take 2 questions from the audience. Very, very brief. And please, when you raise the question, tell us who you're asking it to.
Hello, my name is Lourdes Berjo. I come from Mexico City. And it's kind of hard to address to a specific person. I think you four really integrate a very great model. Just recently, as you probably know, Mexico City had an earthquake. I was part of the earthquake in 1985. I'm part of the Generation X baby boomer millennial generation. We were all very, very amazed to see all this new generation there, to be daring, being themselves, and getting back. Sorry, I become a little sensitive, but getting back Mexico City alive. And it was really all the millennials who stand up, took the leadership, and became everything they are. They're so beautiful, and they have so much and higher purpose to really live for that what we left in our past generations. So my question really is, how do you feel about what we all need to do in the whole world to really unleash that leadership that these new generations are coming with? Just to be more practical, because we had to have an earthquake to see that. Everybody was really almost hating the millennial generations because the previous generations didn't value what they bring. And we were all, as a country, as a nation, and as citizens of the world, really moved and touched by their daring into going and help and do anything that they will be of their nature to do to save people and be alive.
I think that's a very important thing that you're talking about, which is that young people, and I think this is throughout the whole of history, are idealistic. You know, young people want the world to be a better place, and they want their energy to be allowed to help make the world a better place. And we don't help them if we're cynical about that. And I think that there is a big call out from young people for authenticity, for being able to be their own identity in all kinds of ways. And I think they also are calling on economic frameworks to have more integrity. You know, whether it's socialism that's failing or capitalism that's failing, young people are saying this isn't good enough. The economic systems are not serving humanity well. And I think that that is something that as adults and older people, we have to really listen and not just dismiss, and not be thinking that younger people are there basically to sell things to. Their voices need to be allowed to be influential in terms of idealism.
Does anybody else want to take that question? I believe in our last minute, I can take one more question. If not, I'm going to thank the panel. Oh, okay. Well, no, do we have one more question? No. Okay. Thank you so much. This has been a very, very great conversation. And Kumba, thank you for joining us, and apologies for the mix-up at the start. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Gaysamaraye, Gaysamaraye, Gaysamaraye. Gaide, 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 samba da da do ma. Merci.